Hello everyone, welcome once again to my channel. I am Chioma Nwosu, and most of you call me Chimi already, you know. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to achieve a padded off-shoulder mermaid dress. This particular video is a little bit lengthy, but it promises to be very interesting. I've actually used a double circle for the bottom of this dress, and it came out looking very beautiful. Okay, before I go into this tutorial, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would ask that you subscribe. If you found this video interesting, I know you're going to love it though. Make sure to like the video and share this video with your friends and family. And if you're ready, let's go right into it. Okay, in this video, I'm actually going to be using this fabric, and this is a rough sketch of what I'm going to be doing. I've actually sketched the dress, and this is how it's looking. This particular dress is actually starting from the shoulder down to the knee, you know, before the circle is added. You can actually, you know, make yours a little bit different if you can't achieve this, because I've used the princess seam for this dress, and I've cut the princess seam all the way. But you can actually make yours in 3 parts. I mean, that means you can cut yours from the shoulder down to your waist seam, and then you can cut also a skirt down to the knee, and then you can now add your circle. So basically, if you know how to make a basic skirt, that's the pencil skirt, and if you know how to make the circle skirt, which I have a video already, you know, I'm going to put the link at the description box. You know, you can just cut from the shoulder down to the waist. I've showed you guys also how to achieve the princess seam, you know, at least to the waistline. I have a video on my channel for that. And then you can cut down to the knee, the basic skirt, and then you can attach the circle to it. So that's pretty much it, you know. So you can cut it that way if you want, but I didn't put any, you know, any seam on the waist. I just made it from the shoulder all the way to the knee. Okay, so that is it for that. This dress also has an exaggerated sleeve, which I also have a video on how you can achieve an exaggerated sleeve, like a balloon sleeve, on this particular channel. So I'm going to leave all the videos at the description box so that you can go check it out for, you know, you can go check it out. Alright, so these are the measurements that we need, you know, that you'll be needing for this particular tutorial. You need all these measurements to start with, and you have to measure your shoulder all through around your shoulder, because this is an off-shoulder dress, and you also have to measure from one armhole to the other armhole, just like you measured the bust separation measurement or the bust point measurement. In this particular video, I'm going to be using 10.5 inches for that particular measurement. Okay, so I'm just starting to cut out the fabric that we need from the shoulder to the knee, like I said, and from the shoulder to knee I'm using 38 inches. The actual measurement is 37 inches, but I've added 1 inch for seam allowance, both at the bottom and at the top, so I'm using 38 inches, and that is what I'm cutting out right now. Okay, so because I can't get, you know, both the back and the front at the same time, you know, with the quantity of fabric I've cut out, I'm actually going to be working on the front, and then after I finish with the front, I'm going to cut out the back. So the measurement we're using is actually the hip measurement, because that's the largest measurement, you know, that on the body for this particular dress that we're making. So the hip measurement, you know, that I'm working with is 40 inches, and we're going to divide it by 4, because when you're working on the front is actually on a fold, you know, so the front is actually 20 at the back of 20. That's what's going to give 40. Now when you're folding the front, you see that you're working with 10 inches. So that is why I always say, you know, you have to divide by 4, because you're working on the front and you're also folding that particular front. So yeah, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to input all my measurements and, you know, make sure that I have all the allowances that I need. So basically the front is 40 divided by 4, which is 10 inches. Then I'm going to be adding 4 inches of seam allowance. You can add more if you want. It's better for me, it's better to have more, and you have to reduce it, like trim the excess off, than when you have less, then that is a total disaster. Okay, so yeah, so this is all I need. I'm going to cut this out and keep the excess. The excess, I can use it for something else, so it's not going to be a waste. So the next thing, I'm going to measure the neckline, although most of this measurement we're not going to be making use of it eventually, but it's better to start that way since I'm not using a pattern, so that you don't make mistakes. Okay, so if I'm using a pattern, I just go right into it and I'll use less fabric, but this is I'm not using a pattern, so you know I have to use more fabric because I want you guys to understand what I'm doing. So I've just marked 3 inches and I've marked 8 inches for the shoulder. Those are the standard measurement that I use basically for neckline and shoulder measurement. Then the shoulder slope is 1 inch. If you've seen my video on how to draft a basic bodice pattern, all this process, you know, are actually there, so you can check it out if you have any questions or you're confused. So now I'm marking the armhole measurement, which is 8 inches. Basically, you can take your armhole measurement, you can just measure around your armhole, and whatever you get there, I got 16 inches, and that's why I'm marking 8 inches. Or you can just use the formula of, you know, your bust measurements plus 6. I mean, your bust measurements divided by 6 plus 1 inch to, you know, achieve your armhole. Whatever you get there, you just put that figure right there. So the next measurement is actually the bust measurement, which is 38 inches. So the bust measurement divided by 4 will give us 9.5. So I'm going to add 2 inches of allowance there, you know, to that measurement. So that's what I've marked right there. So the next measurement we are going to mark will be the bust point measurement. Which is 10 inches, so I'm going to add half inch to it, which is going to give us 10.5 inches. This half inch is just for seam allowance. Then the next is the under bust, which is 13, but I'm adding half, which is 13 and a half, or 13.5. And then the next measurement, you know, I'm going to mark is the waistline measurement, which is actually 16 inches, but I'm going to make it, you know, you can actually use between 16 to 18 inches. Okay, so that's 17 inches, which I've marked right now. Okay, so the next measurement I'm going to mark now is a hip measurement. That's a hip point, which is between 8 to 9 inches from your waist, and I'm going to be using 8 inches for that. And I've marked all that, so I'm just going to extend all my lines. If you actually follow my videos, you see that this process I've actually done it over and over again, but because there are always new people on this channel and I cannot just, you know, I just have to say them again. That's why we have to go through this process again, so that those that are new and do not understand what I'm doing can understand. So if you're not new to this channel, please bear with me. Okay, so I've actually extended all the lines. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do here is, you know, to impute the bust separation measurement, or the nipple to nipple measurement. Some people call it the bust span measurement, you know, and I'm using 8 inches, or mine is 8 inches for this particular dress, but I have to add half an inch of seam allowance, so I'm going to be using, instead of 4, because this is divided by 2, I'm going to use 4.5, you know. So I actually, if you add 8 plus 1 inch, that will give you 9 inches. So because it's on a fold, I'm going to use 4.5, that's divided by 2. So I'm going to extend that line like so. So the next thing we're going to do is to, you know, impute our darts, and we're going to start working on the waistline. That is the waistline. You know, I hope you don't get confused with all the lines I have. Okay, so you can actually take out 1 inch from both sides, you know, but I always like to take out more from the side, you know, so I always like to take out about 1.5 inches, you know, so that the bust protrudes more, you know, it just makes it more pronounced. Okay, so I'm going to take out 1.5 inches on the side, and I'm going to do the same on the under bust line. So that's the under bust line there that we marked initially. I'm going to do the same, and we're going to connect all this to the bust points. Okay, so after doing this, we're going to measure from the hip point about 2 inches upward, and we're going to connect from the waistline down to the hip point. Okay, so we have our darts. You know, and this is the way it's looking. Okay, so the next thing to do is to come over to the shoulder line. So we're going to measure, just, you know, because it's an off shoulder, so you have to determine where you want your off shoulder, or how much of your shoulder you want to be exposed. Okay, so I'm going to be using 6 inches for mine, so you can make yours 5 inches, or you can, it just depends on what you want. So 6 inches is where I want mine to stop, and whatever is, you know, up, we're going to cut it out. Okay, but before then, we're also going to, you know, complete our darts. This dart is going all the way up, so we're going to measure 1 inch on each side, like I'm doing right now, and connect it down. So I'm not using the armhole dart for this particular off-shoulder dress. It is possible to use the armhole dart to do this, but this is, you know, the way I want mine to look. Okay, so I'm just going to connect it to the bust points like so, and this is the shape I have right now. So I'm just going to label this a little bit so that you understand. That's the under bust. I'm using UB, and the waistline, and then the hip, you know, so that you don't get confused, because there are so many lines here already. Okay, so that is the chest line. Okay, so the next one I'm going to measure is the, you know, the chest line. I've measured that already, and I told you I measured from one armhole to the other armhole, you know. So after shaping the bust, you know, the bust, there are no sharp edges. You have to make sure that you curve, you know, all your markings properly, you know. So I'm going to now go ahead to impute the measurement. So what I got from one shoulder to the other is 10.5 inches. You can measure yours, and even if you don't measure yours, you can just reduce the armhole a little bit, and then you get the shape that you desire. So I'm going to measure, when you divide that by 2, you get about 5.2, you know, something. So now I've actually taken out 2 inches, you know, as my dart. Yeah, 1 inch on each side. So I'm going to add that, which is going to give us about 7 point something, and I'm going to just mark that right there. Okay, I'm just going to shape. So basically, from your armhole, you know, you could just go in like 1 inch from your armhole, you know, to make it easier for you. Even if you didn't take that measurement, just go in from your armhole by 1 inch, and then you reshape your armhole. So I'm not using the initial armhole measurement that I had for this dress. Okay, so when you're doing this, take notes. So I'm also coming down a little bit, like 1 inch from the armhole line, that's the armhole line we have there. So I just came down a little bit, 1 inch. This is not mandatory, you can do this if you like, but because I want the off shoulder, the sleeve to connect properly, that is why I've used this method. And then I've reshaped my armhole, so look at it properly, and this is the way mine is looking. Okay, so now I'm going to impute the bust measurement, which is 9.5 inches, and I've added 2 inches to it already to give us about 11.5 inches. So the next thing is to go to the waistline. The waist is 32 inches, and when you divide that by 4, you get, when you divide that by 4, you get 8 inches. Then you add 2 inches of seam allowance to it to give you 10 inches. Then we have another 2.5 inches that we took out from the waist. I've added that measurement back to the actual measurement. Don't forget to add that. Then the next thing we do is to go to the hip measurement. The hip is 40, and we're just going to add 2 inches of allowance to it, and I'm going to add another ½ inch of allowance because of the seam is running all the way through the waist. So by the time we stitch it, we're going to use a little bit of allowance. So instead of adding just 2 inches, I've added 2.5 inches, and I used 12.5 inches for the hip. And the next thing is just to connect it all the way to the hip. From the busts, I've connected it to the hip, and from the hip, you see I used 12.5. I'm going to take out 2 inches from that measurement to impute my knee measurement. So I'll be using 10.5 for the knee, or you can just make sure you measure your knee round, or your client's knee round, that's round the knee, and make sure there's a little bit of room for so that whoever is wearing this dress can move. There's a little bit of room for movement. Some people love theirs to be super tight, but it just all depends in what you're comfortable with. So I've just connected all my lines, and this is the way it's looking. Well, it looks a little bit funny to me, but yeah, you're going to see the way it's going to turn out by the time we're done with our dress. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out, right? Oh yeah, so this is the way it is looking. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to curve the center front a little bit, from the bust part. I want it to have a little bit of I want the shape to look like a sweetheart, so I'm just going to shape that a little bit. And just cut it. So this is optional, this is my preference, so you can do this if you want to. Okay, so this is the way it's looking right now. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out the back. So I'll show you guys how I get to cut out the back. So this is the fabric for the back, and it's pretty much the same thing. Same length is 38 inches. Actual measurement 37 plus 1 inch, which has made it 38 inches. So I'm just going to take out the zipper allowance, and I'm using 2 inches. You can use less for yours if you want to, but when I'm working with Ankara, I always like to use more. So 2 inches is what I'm going to be using for this, even if though I get to trim most of it off eventually, but it doesn't really matter. I prefer to have more than less. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead to actually impute all the measurements that I have, and the back is actually similar to the front. You just do almost the same thing so that you get everything to, you know, match. The front has to match with the back. So yeah, I've actually done the shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches, and the slope, which is 1 inch, and that's what I've marked there. Now that is the armhole measurement, which is also 8 inches. So I'm just going to connect all that. So the next thing I'm going to do is just to go ahead and measure the waistline measurement, and I'm going to use exactly the same measurement I've used for the front, which is 17 inches. And then from there, measure the hip point, which is 8 inches from there. Then our off shoulder, I used 6 inches. And that's what I'm going to mark, or that's what I'm marking right now. So I'm going to extend all the lines. So I've just marked the bust separation measurement there as well for our darts. Same thing I did for the front. So I'm just going to take out, you know, the darts, and I'm using 1 inch on both sides, but you know, you can actually use ½ inch on both sides because the back there's no bust there, but I did this because it helps to reduce the zip bulge. Okay, so that's why I took out 1 inch on each side. So if you're not comfortable with that, take out ½ inch on each side, it's fine. So I'm just going to connect, you know, that's all the way to the off shoulder line that we have there. So basically that is it, and I measured the same thing I measured for the armhole to armhole. I used the same measurements that I used for the front, and that is it. So I've cut that out. That is pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead to show you guys how to achieve the circle that I use for this dress. So I use a double circle for this dress, and that simply means that I use 2 full circles. You know, it gives the hem a better look, to make it look fuller, and I love the outcome. So basically I've actually done a video on how to cut out a circle, or how to make a circle skirt, and that's an easy method though. You know, if you want to use that method, I'll put you can check out the link at the description box. And there are so many other videos I think I have done on how to cut out your full circle. Basically you just use the formula and then find out what the radius is. So you use the circumference, that's the measurement that we have for the knee. Like I told you, you have to measure the knee, the round of knee, or you know, like the method we used, we removed, hello dear, we removed 2 inches from the hip measurements. You know, so you can, that is for one side, so you can make it that measurement, multiply that measurement, and you will get whatever you achieve. Take out the same allowance, and that's what you're going to use. So I'm just folding my fabric right now to cut out the circle. Please ignore any noise you hear in the background. These my kids are awake and they're actually talking and greeting and all that stuff. Okay, so I've cut out one of the circle, and this is what it looks like, and this is the second circle that we have. Now I've cut out the back circle slightly longer than the front circle, so the back is about 4 inches longer than the front. Okay, but you know, when you're cutting circles, especially when you're using this African print, you know that you cannot achieve a full circle without any joining, because the length is by 45 inches, and I explained all this in the other video that I did a long time ago. So you see, that is why I have the joining by the side. So just look for a fabric or a place and make sure the patterns are that if the patterns are going horizontal, they should go horizontal. Don't get to join it to have a different direction. Okay, so I'm going to join that. This is join that because that's the only way I can do it for this particular fabric. I will show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so then I'm going to go right into cutting the sleeve. And then the sleeve, I'm using a different fabric, which is the organza for the sleeve. To cut out the sleeve, I've just folded my organza into two. I'm going to cut out the both sleeve at the same time, to save time. But doing this, make sure that you iron your organza down because it can be kind of tricky working with organza, so make sure you iron it after folding it so that it's easier to measure. Okay, so I'm using 12 inches. That is the round sleeve measurement, but this is an exaggerated sleeve, so you can double the measurement or even triple the measurement if you want to, so that by the time you use your elastic, you're going to get that effect that you desire. So it doesn't really matter how big you want this particular organza to be. I just doubled mine and added a couple of inches, but you can make yours even bigger than that. So what I'm going to do next is to take out to measure the length, and the length I'm using is 23 inches, but I've added a whole lot more to that because we're going to be using elastic, and by the time you add elastic, you see that the sleeve is going to be shorter than the actual measurement. So you need to add more, to that, and also you need allowance to hem the elastic in. So you have to add all the allowance together, So it's actually your choice, So next thing you're going to do is to cut out the armhole, and I've measured 4 on one side, and I'm measuring 4 on the other side. Actually, this is the same measurement that we have on the bodice. So I'm just going to check that out, make sure that it matches, because we're going to be joining them together after all, so you have to make sure that it matches. One thing that you should also note is that the sleeve is going to have an elastic band, a 1-inch elastic band, so you can actually increase the sleeve to attach the elastic instead of cutting exactly. So you can increase the sleeve by 2 inches so that by the time you fold in your elastic, it stays properly. Or you can use the method of folding your elastic into another organza strip and attaching it. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so this is what we have here. We have all our panels for the back, the front, and this is the lining I'm going to be using for this particular dress. It's a cotton lining, so I'm going to cut out exactly the same thing as what I have on the main fabric on the lining. Then I'll go ahead to pad, using interfacing and all that stuff. I'll do that. I'll go on and iron the interfacing because we're padding the bust, and I will show you guys what it looks like. Then I will actually continue from there. So before we do that, our circle is already joined. This is how it's looking. So I told you the back is actually longer than the front circle. So what I have to do right now is to blend the back and the front circle together from the side seam. So the side seam has to match. Like, you can't make the front and the back longer. You can't make the back longer than the front because it's not going to be it's not going to blend in properly. So I'm going to go ahead to open up the circle on the front just to reveal the side seam, and I'm going to go ahead to blend the side. for the back and the front, and then you just see the way I'm going to achieve that. Yeah, so I'm just going to do that like so. So I'm just going to use my chalk to mark where and how I want it to flow in. This gives the back, like, you know, that kind of tail kind of look, and I just like that it's not actually the same as the front, that the back is actually longer. So I'm just cutting that out. Basically, that's all that we need to do. We have joined my circle to give us that full circle that we need. Okay, so here is the padded front. So I've actually gone ahead to pad it. So this is where the bust is looking, and I used interfacing. This here is the airstay, and I also use what they call the soft gum, something, paper gum. Yeah, that's what they call it. So I use it for the lining as well, and this is to, you know, keep the bust in place. And you see, you don't really need to use a bust pad, you know, you can do that yourself. Maybe I'll probably do a video on how you can achieve that, you know. Then I've actually added some interfacing as well to the back, and I also open up the seam using interfacing to keep it down. I mean, that's a good trick. It keeps your seam down and makes it look neat. So that's what I did for both the lining and for the main fabric, and this is how it's looking. So next I'm going to go ahead to join the front and the back together individually, like separately. I'm not attaching. I'm going to join the main fabric on its own, and I'm going to join the lining on its own before I, you know, actually complete, you know, the dress. I'm going to show you guys how it looks like when I'm done, how, you know, what it looks like. So I'm going to attach the lining and every other thing, and I'll go ahead to do that off camera, and I'll show you guys what it actually looks like. Don't forget that we're attaching the circle. Okay, so that's the circle right there, so I'm just going to go ahead and attach it as well. So the circle, I'm attaching the back to the back. That's the longer circle to the back, and then the shorter circle to the front. And this is the way it's going to look. Don't also forget that I cut out just one single circle for the lining, you know, and I'm going to attach that circle to the lining when I've joined, you know, from the waist to the hip. So this is actually what our dress is looking like. It's complete, it's done. You can see the elastic that we have on the shoulder. Okay, so this is the elastic that we have to keep the sleeve down, because the sleeve is exaggerated, you know, the measurements we use is more than what we needed, you know. So I've actually done this and it looks so beautiful. The dress is properly finished. The inner part of the dress is neat, you know. We finished everything. We finished the hem with crinoline, and I just love the effect that the crinoline added to this dress. Made it look, you know, super nice. It looks more professional look. Okay, so this is how the inside of the dress is looking. It's so neat. The zip is properly attached. There's no fraying around it because we've closed up everything, and also there's no loose thread. You know, you have to make sure that you cut out every loose thread, and I just love the way it's looking both on the inside and on the outside. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to try this dress out. Yeah, I know from the beginning you see what it looks like, so that you can have a glimpse of what it looks like. Thank you for watching this tutorial. If this tutorial, you know, was helpful to you in any way, make sure to thumbs up this video. Don't forget to subscribe. When you do, don't forget to turn up the notification bell so that you get notified when I upload a new video, and I'll see you in my next video.